Good afternoon and welcome into Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet, a sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns, now live in Ohio. Bo Bishop on assignment today and tomorrow, but we've got a loaded show for you on CBD today, coming up at 1:15. Nick Shook from NFL.com and NFL Network will join the show, and then in hour number 2 o'clock, it's the Joe Thomas half hour of the Hoff, back from Germany again, and he will join us at 2 o'clock there. We've got some higher or lower to go to. We'll tell you about this Thursday at Razzles. We got the Kevin Stefanski show on remote, so a lot to get to there. The NFL wrapped up week number 10 on Monday night. It was the Dolphins and the Rams in L.A. Dolphins coming out on top in this game, and in many ways this game to me was kind of emblematic of really a lot of things that happened in this week, and then kind of backing up bigger picture this season. And that is teams that can move the ball, teams with good talent that cannot get the football in the end zone. In this game, the Rams scored 15 points, 5 field goals, not a single touchdown, not able to get it done in the red zone. That has been a problem, I think, for really a lot of teams in the NFL. And then on the other side, the shocker to me with Miami is even with Tua back now, they cannot get Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill going. Jalen Waddle had 3 catches for 57 yards. He had 2 for 55 on the opening drive. Tyreek Hill, 3 catches, 16 yards, and 1 touchdown on the day. 3 catches for 16 yards. Tyreek Hill had over 1,700 yards receiving last year. He's one of the great vertical threats in the NFL. They just cannot get the ball down the field. That long pass to Jalen Waddle was on a broken play. Other than that, they really could not get the ball down the field. And Tyreek Hill is right now on pace for 873 yards and 4 touchdowns. And when you think about what he's done, in his career, that's just shocking to me. 37 catches, 462 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's had back-to-back 1,700-yard seasons. He's averaged over 15 yards a catch last year. The year before, 14.4. For his career, it's 14.1. He's at 12.5 this year. And his targets are way down. He's averaging, in 9 games, he's got 60 targets, so that's basically 6.5 targets per game. He was averaging the prior 2 seasons over 10 targets per game. So utilization is down, the way he is being utilized down, all of it. And Tyreek Hill's a guy that a lot of people, certainly from a fantasy standpoint, drafted very early in their drafts, and he has not returned anything on that investment for you. Just, again, strange game, and it really is. You think about the Atlanta Falcons. They lose that game down in New Orleans because they can't get it in the end zone. They kick 4 field goals. They miss 3 of them. The Niners almost lost to Tampa Bay because they could not get the football into the end zone, and they had 3 missed field goals as well. And so 2 missed field goals by the Denver Broncos. They lose to Kansas City. Teams, it's very strange. Minnesota won a game in which Sam Darnold threw 3 picks, and they didn't score a touchdown. They settled for 4 field goals, and they won that game 12-7. I mean, all the offense this week came really on Thursday Night Football in terms of a very competitive offensive game, 35-34. Pittsburgh and Washington, 28-27. That one had a little bit of scoring in it. Buffalo, Indianapolis, 30-20. That got to 50 total. And then you had a couple of blowouts where Philly put up 34, but Dallas only 6. Arizona, 31. The Jets only 6. The Detroit game had 26-23, but a lot of turnovers. It was just a strange and really kind of an ugly week in the NFL. And for the Rams, this was a game that they really needed. For the Dolphins, it's a game that on some level kind of keeps them in it. They've got a lot of talent. They just have not played, unfortunately, to that level of late. But that's where you were. That was Monday Night Football. Not a whole lot going on there. He's got the swag it going. Look at him, Senior Swag. He's ready. Big day in the office. Big day. But to me, that's the thing that's so surprising right now about the NFL is we talked about offense being down, completion percentage is up, yards per completion is down. I would have to imagine that if somebody was out there listening and did a deep dive into this, there's no doubt in my mind that red zone efficiency is down across the league. You're seeing more field goals kicked, I think, than we have seen in a long time. At least it certainly feels that way, but it seems that way too when you look at it. Dolphins now, believe it or not, folks, are a game and a half out of the wild card. the Bengals are still very much alive. So right now, if you're looking in the AFC, your division leaders, Chiefs are 9-0, Bills are 8-2. Bills are 5 games up basically in their division. Steelers are 7-2. They lead over the Ravens, who are 7-3 by a half a game, and the Texans are 6-4. The wild cards right now: the Ravens at 7-3, the Chargers at 6-3, Broncos at 5-5. Colts are a game out, Bengals are a game out, Dolphins are a game and a half out. So it's still wide open. I mean, even if you were going down for the Browns standpoint, 2.5 games out, which doesn't, to be 2-7 and only 2.5 games out seems crazy, but that's where you are. Amazingly, in the AFC now, you've got 4 2-loss teams: Browns, Titans, Raiders, Jags, and in the NFC, only one, the Giants, who are 2-8, and obviously the Giants beat the Browns. 3-win teams: Cowboys, Saints, Panthers. Cowboys got the Browns, and then Dolphins, Jets, Patriots in the AFC. So, yeah, it's there. It's open. It's open for the taking, but I think the Dolphins kept themselves right in this one with a big win. And for the Rams, that's a big loss. The Rams win that game and are at 5-4. They're 1 game out of the playoffs. Right now, if the playoffs started today, the 49ers would not be in at 5-4. The Packers are the 7 seed at 6-3. Vikings 7-2. Commanders 7-3. It's pretty wild there. Pretty wild. The Falcons have a 2-game lead in their division. So Bucks 2 games back. It's really a 3-game lead because they beat the Bucks head-to-head twice. Things are starting to take shape here, and we still have, in many cases, teams either have, 7 or 8 games to go. So we're halfway through, but things have really already separated, and that was a big one last night down there in L.A. for the Rams to lose that one at home. And again, field goals, you can't kick threes. Threes are better than nothing, obviously, but when you're a team that is settling for nothing but field goals and you cannot get the ball in the end zone, you're not going to win very often in the National Football League, and that's what we are seeing right now. All right, last night I finished after the game. I was able to watch the finale of Penguin. Gee, man, what a program, what a show, what an unbelievable ending. Tough. Remember, he's a villain. It's not a light story, that's for sure, but incredible. I couldn't recommend that show any more highly that people go out there and check out the Penguin. All right, Brown standpoint, players are off today because, remember, we had the bye week, so they're back on Monday for a practice, off today, and then you'll get your normal Wednesday, Thursday, Friday practice week as you get ready to take on the New Orleans Saints. And the Saints are a team, and we'll meet them, obviously, tomorrow on the program. But the Saints, they sit at 3-7 this season. Make a coaching change, and they win. Prior to that coaching change, they had lost 6 in a row. Actually, 7 in a row. Wow. They started off 2-0. They beat the Panthers 47-10, and then the Cowboys 44-19. Lose to the Eagles, lose to the Falcons, lose to the Chiefs, lose to the Bucks, lose to the Broncos, lose to the Chargers, lose to the Panthers, and then they eke out that win over the Falcons where Younghoe Koo missed 3 field goals in that one, and they win it 20-17. They have their bye week the following week, but obviously this is a game gettable for the Cleveland Browns, and anytime you can win, that's something that can keep you alive given just the state of the NFL right now, it's wild to think that the Browns would be lumped in it, and yes, you can still shock the world and get to 10-7, get to 9-8. Would require a lot, obviously, over the second half of the schedule. But here we are halfway through, and we're going to do some higher or lower, and there are 9 teams or so that people are saying are already eliminated halfway through the season. So a very, very strange year that has happened here in the NFL. But I think a lot of it has come down to some offensive ineptitude and inability to score. I don't know if defenses are just getting better or not or what, but that's what's happening around the NFL. And it's certainly a very, very interesting thing to see play out. And I thought last night was a perfect example of it. You had 2 teams that have a lot of talent: Stafford, Tua, Achane, Mostert, Kyron Williams, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and not a lot of fireworks. Not a lot of fireworks at all. So just a very, it's just been a little bit of a strange year, certainly offensively. And Browns fans, you're listening to this, it's been a very strange year for our Cleveland Browns as well. Dak Prescott, we're going to get we'll go around the league in a little bit, but quarterbacks are now starting to drop like flies in certain situations. It's nuts. The teams that are in a good spot right now aren't just in a good spot. They're in a great spot because, number one, they all have good records. Their quarterbacks are healthy. Things are looking good for those teams at the top, and we'll talk about that later on in the program. But that's where everything is right now. Nice to see the sun out there. Here comes the great Gibbe walking up the stairs. He's got big meetings. Yes, G-Man?
So this is from Kev back in studio at 8:50. 20 of 32 NFL teams have higher red zone efficiency percentages this year than last year.
Really? Maybe they're just not
Highest
getting
is
to the
Baltimore
red zone.
at 77%. Nice job out of you, Kev.
Good job, Kev. Then teams are not getting to the red zone because they're just scoring is down. Offensive production is down, and you're just seeing, and maybe it was just this week, but it felt like there were so many games this week where teams kicked nothing but field goals, really. Like New England beat Chicago 19-3. They kicked 4 field goals in that game. We talked about 5 field goals by the Rams in that game, only points that were scored. 4 field goals by the Vikings, only points that they scored in that game. I think in Kansas City, I'm pretty sure they made 1 touchdown, and 3 field goals to score their 16 points. Just a lot of field goals, and they're ultimately determining the outcomes of games. In the games where your kicker kicks them well, you got a shot, unless that's all you get. In the games where they don't, and Atlanta's the prime example, you lose those games. But you've got to get the ball in the end zone. So maybe teams just aren't getting there as much, but whatever's going on, we're not seeing the prolific passing outside of, again, you talk about Thursday night. Of course, Thursday night was dynamite passing, but just looking through, I'll go game by game real quickly. So Thursday night you have, and passing I think is really where a lot of this is. Burrow 428 and 4, Lamar Jackson 290 and 4. Good chance that those end up being the 2 best performances of the week. Daniel Jones 190 and 2 picks, Bryce Young 126 and a touchdown. In the Denver KC game, Patrick Mahomes 266 and a touchdown, Bo Nix 215, 2 touchdowns. Not terrible there. Pittsburgh, Washington. Russell Wilson completes 50% of his passes for 195 yards, does throw 3 touchdowns. Jaden Daniels, 202 yards. So far, Burrow's my only 300er that we've got. This is not going to have anything. Sam Darnold, 241 and 3 picks. Mac Jones, 111 yards and 2 picks. 111 yards in a game where they were throwing the ball quite a bit. Kirk Cousins, 306. That's our second 300-yard game, but not a single touchdown. Derek Carr, 269 and 2 touchdowns. Brock Purdy, we know Brock Purdy did it, 353 and 2 touchdowns. Baker, 116 on 30 pass attempts and a touchdown. It's just passing is not, it's just not where it was. Josh Allen, 280, no touchdowns, 2 picks. Joe Flacco, 272, 2 touchdowns, 3 picks. A lot of picks this week. Mentioned New England and Chicago. Drake May, 184. Caleb Williams, 120. The Chargers and the Titans, Will Levis, 175. Herbert, 164 in a winning effort, threw for 164 yards in that one. Philly and Dallas. Cooper Rush. Cooper Rush has one of the craziest stat lines I've ever seen in my life. 13 of 23 for 45 yards. 45 yards on 23 pass attempts. I've never heard anything like that. Jalen Hurts, 202. And then you go to the one other blowout. You had Arizona and the Jets. 266 and a touchdown for Kyler, 151 for Aaron Rodgers. Houston and Detroit, 240 for Goff, 230 for C.J. Stroud. And then last night's game, you had Matt Stafford, 293 to a 207. Not a lot of passing, so 2 quarterbacks threw for over 300 yards with multiple touchdowns. Joe Burrow and Brock Purdy, that's it. That's the list. That used to be not the norm, but you'd have a handful of guys every week throwing at that level, and you just heard it. Just Cousins also went over 300 yards. That was it. Not a lot of passing, not a lot of scoring. That was really the story there in week number 10 in the NFL. When we come back, we're going to talk about the Browns. We're going to talk about the league as well, when a good friend of the program, Nick Shook, joins us right here. By the way, those were your hot topics of the day presented by University Hospitals, the official healthcare partner of your Cleveland Browns. We'll be back with more Cleveland Browns Daily right after this. For a team of injury lawyers dedicated to every client every day, call 1-800-ELK-OHIO. Elk and Elk is a proud partner of the Cleveland Browns. Now we head to the Twisted Tea Hotline, brought to you by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, an official sponsor of the Cleveland Browns. Keep it Twisted, Cleveland. And we welcome in Nick Shook of NFL.com and the NFL Network, who joins us now. Mr. Shook, how are you?
Fantastic, my friend. How are you?
I'm glorious. Great to talk with you. You follow him on X at the Nick Shook. Guy's a tremendous follow. All right, first, before we get into real NFL stuff, update me on your Madden franchise season, your league. What's going on?
Well, I'll tell you what. We're in 2025. We've drafted a new quarterback, and we are 8-3, baby, making a push for the AFC North title. We're rolling.
Okay, good. All right. Maybe that's a harbinger of things to come. So that is good. It sounds like your 2024 was not as good, and as you know, the Cleveland Browns 2024 not certainly off to a good start at the midway point, 2-7. What do you kind of make of this season and what's happened to a team that was, by all accounts, definitely all in on trying to win the AFC North and compete for a Super Bowl, and it just has not happened?
No, it hasn't happened. I think the consistency has been on the defensive side that carried over from last year. It hasn't been, as reliable on a week-to-week basis as you might expect or hope, but that's the NFL in a nutshell. It's the offense that has absolutely cratered. It started at quarterback. Nobody, needs to lie to themselves and say that, Deshaun Watson was not good enough to play in the NFL as a starting quarterback. I mean, that's just the facts. As somebody who watches and evaluates every quarterback every week, he was clearly the worst starting quarterback in the NFL, and there were a number of backups who probably would have done better than him, and he just didn't perform well. And I think that limited the entire offense. Bringing in a new offensive coordinator with the goal of building an offense around that quarterback also has not proven to be the best decision for this group. Watson was not executing the offense the way it was intended. You've seen the many clips of him missing receivers that are open because he's pulling his eyes down too quickly in the face of a pass rush. Part of that is because the offensive line was injured and he didn't have a lot of time to throw, which is understandable, but this is also something that he used to do in Houston. He used to run out of clean pockets all the time. The only issue now is that, he didn't have the mobility to get out of the pocket. And the whole offense suffered as a result. I mean, it's not just a coincidence that you rank 31st in total yards per game and you rank 28th in passing, and that's after Jameis Winston had a strong game against the Ravens a couple of weeks ago. So that was the biggest issue. That not having a healthy offensive line hurt, not having Nick Chubb back until very recently, and he's still clearly coming back from his own knee injury, which is a significant one suffered last season. You didn't have the key pieces in place, I think, and I am pretty encouraged by the receiving core. I love what Jerry Jeudy brings to the table. Elijah Moore has, found a little bit of a footing with Jameis Winston, especially in that game against the Ravens. Said Tillman, obviously the 2 touchdown catches in that game. That's all encouraging. It's not a situation in which I think you need to go in and blow everything up. There's talent on this team. There's talent on the defensive side of the ball, obviously, but it starts at quarterback. And that's the story with every NFL team. It starts at quarterback, and I think the Browns need to take a long, hard look at their situation and figure out how they're going to go forward because, unfortunately, Deshaun Watson, at least in my opinion and the opinion of many others, is not the answer.
So one of the things, obviously, at the time of the trade, we knew all of the things surrounding Deshaun Watson and the scrutiny that would bring and the hardship that would bring. But I think, and we've heard from, I'm pretty sure the general manager of Houston said there were 13 teams that were in on the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes. How can you explain or how surprised are you? I don't think anybody around the league, let me rephrase it, thought that his play would deteriorate to this level. I think you certainly can understand a franchise taking a swing for the circumstances where they have circumstances, but taking a swing on a guy that was at the time a top 5 quarterback in the league, and the only reason he would be available is because of obviously off-the-field issues and significant ones at that. But nobody really thought that the play would get to this level. So what do you make of that, and how surprised? I mean, obviously it's a unique situation. It's kind of a one-on-one, and there's really no other apples-to-apples comparison for it. But it's still a stunning part of this, and one of the reasons that the Browns are where they are.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what frustrates me when everybody, gets on their soapbox or whatever they do and condemns the Browns for making what everybody now sees as an obviously bad decision. I mean, at the time, not only, Andrew Berry saying that there was, 13 teams in the sweepstakes, but we knew of at least 3 teams that were like the finalists, including Carolina, Atlanta, and Cleveland being the other one. A lot of teams were very eager to add him. There was a sweepstakes for a reason. And folks like to point to the fact that he missed an entire season as an indicator that he wasn't going to be good. And I disagree with that because, there have been many players who have missed entire seasons or close to it and been able to come back and recapture their form. And he was also in the prime of his career. So to look at that with the benefit of hindsight and say, I told you so, they should have seen this, I think is just inaccurate. It's off base. But I do think that the time off plus the suspension plus the shoulder injury last year have all compounded to make him into a player that he's degraded as a player. Not to mention, he did this to himself, of course, but the mental impact of everything that he brought upon himself with the off-field decisions that he made, and the trade and the pressure and everything else. I think it all just kind of combined to tank the career of a player that was the NFL leader in passing yards. Now, I had issues with his style of play in Houston at times, namely running out of clean pockets, but people like to overlook that because he still put up the numbers and everything else. But now that you look at it, again, with the privilege of hindsight, you could see that some of these things could have happened. I think that, the story of him in Cleveland is it was a plane that never had an opportunity to get off the ground. Even last season, he's limited to the short amount of games that he had because of an injury, and then he comes back again this year, and his arm is not the same. It just doesn't have, the same ability that he had before. He's mobility-wise, he's just not there anymore. All of the powers that I guess made him a very good quarterback, if not great, are gone. And it's unfortunate, but we've seen declines in players before. Having said that, because of what the Browns gave up, and because of the associated risk, knowing that there was probably going to be a suspension involved, I do think it still stands as probably the worst trade in NFL history. But you don't entirely blame them for that because at the time, like we said, a number of different teams were on board with that. So you kind of live with the outcome of the decision, and the most important thing now is how do you move forward? Because I think that we've all realized that there is no trying to make this work, and now it's about how do you keep this team afloat and answer the biggest problem that now exists.
Talking with Nick Shook. How would you want to move forward? Kevin Span's saying, Jameis Winston's our starter going forward. You've got DTR on a 5th-round rookie deal going in. He's in his 2nd year, would be in his 3rd year next year. How would you want to see these final 8 games go, given that at some point it is likely that the postseason will be fully off the table?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just tell you now, it's off the table. The way that the schedule sets up, I could see them on paper looking at a situation like New Orleans. I thought was the one game where it was like, all right, I could see them winning it, and then they get the interim head coach bump and get a win over the Falcons last weekend, which has then thrown that into question for me. Pittsburgh, Denver, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Cincinnati, Miami, Baltimore. Those are all difficult games. Okay, and this team has not played well enough for me to believe that they should be favored, or as somebody who predicts games every week, I don't know if I'll be feeling confident enough to pick them in any of those games. Having said that, this is a league that's very difficult to predict. You can just look at my predictions record this year, which is like an all-time low. Usually I'm like a top 5 predictor, and this year I'm struggling mightily because, games happen like last night where the Rams, who are on a hot streak, lose to the Dolphins and look like, basically put forth one of their worst games of the season. So when it comes to predicting how this season plays out, it's not going to be pretty, I don't think. But I do think that you could gain something out of that at quarterback. I'm sure you can agree with this or confirm this, but outside at least, it seems as if that organization is still very high on DTR. I feel like we will see him at some point. You have to, especially if you have a season where you don't have really anything on the line in terms of postseason chances. Why not get him some reps?
Yep.
But I think the important thing for that is putting him in the right situation, which starts with the offensive line's health. And they've gotten in a better place in the last couple of weeks. It started with the Baltimore game, where you see DeJuan Jones at left tackle, you get Wyatt Teller back, you have Jack Conklin in there. Posey comes back from injury. Like, you want to get as close to your starting 5 as you can before you put DTR back in that position, and then prepare him over the course of a week to play. And I think at some point you're going to see that happen, because while everybody loves Jameis for who he is and what he brings to the table, what are you gaining from him other than confirmation that he is a backup that could be a plus backup for the long term? Nothing, really. So you might as well figure out what you have in quarterback in DTR. So I think you will see him at some point, and I think that should be an obligation from a franchise development standpoint. That should be on the checklist. We're going to see him play again and figure out, what you think you might have in him and try to help his growth. Otherwise, stay as healthy as possible. The defense, for the most part, save for some blown coverages against the Chargers, they've been solid.
Yeah.
Jim Schwartz still has that group together. You trade Zadarius Smith, so now you got to test out who else you might want to work in there and see who's going to be there for the long run. But it's all about vetting your team now and figuring out, all right, what pieces do we want to keep around? We know what we have in Myles Garrett. We know what we have in a number of other key contributors. But what about the guys that are in between, not necessarily on the bubble, but in between? That's the value in a season in which you know that you're not going to make the playoffs. You can at least get a bunch of games to test these guys out and set a roadmap forward, again, with a plan that eventually you're going to have somebody else playing quarterback. That's not Winston. Could be DTR, could be somebody else. You kind of have to figure that out right now.
Yeah, talking with Nick Shook, around the NFL writer. Follow him on X at the Nick Shook. So we know where the Browns are, and obviously, there are some good young pieces on both sides of the ball you want to see develop over these final 8 games. But as we kind of take a step back and we look at this league, and I was talking about it earlier, just again, a strange week. You have teams winning games that have happened multiple times throughout the year where all they've done is kick field goals. Minnesota did it most recently this week. Last night, you were mentioning the Rams. They couldn't get the ball in the end zone. It feels like scoring, and maybe it's just anecdotally, but it feels like scoring is down, feels like passing is down. What's kind of going on with this league as you see it, and do you have any kind of reasons for why we're seeing very what I would call lackluster, consistent offensive play?
I think scoring is down and passing was down, especially early in the season. I think some of that had to do with health of your key players. I think about Justin Herbert. He got off to a very slow start this season with a new offense, with Greg Roman calling the plays there for Jim Harbaugh's staff. But he also lost both of his starting tackles in week 2. He had an ankle injury that limited his mobility, and he was struggling. But now, over the last month, he's playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and the Chargers are benefiting as a result. You also have the outcomes that nobody could predict, like Sam Darnold having a good year, save for this past weekend in which he threw 3 interceptions and looked like the Sam Darnold of old, and the Vikings needed a bunch of field goals to beat the Jaguars. It's just a weird season in that regard. C.J. Stroud has rarely had time to throw all season. I think he's been sacked the most of any quarterback in the NFL. And it wasn't until Sunday night in the first half that he actually got some time to throw and, again, became the C.J. Stroud that we knew. So it's just a lack of consistency, really. Even Philadelphia, their carryover from their meltdown last year affected them offensively to the first 6 or 7 weeks of the season before they started to find their stride. That was coupled with the loss of A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith to injuries. He gets both of them back. Saquon Barkley goes off, and suddenly that offense is rolling again. So it's a lot of volatility. Jordan Love gets hurt a couple times. They have to go with Malik Willis. It's just a lot of volatility in quarterback availability and the health of the players that are tasked with protecting them or catching passes from them. Even in Pittsburgh, Justin Fields starts the season because Russell Wilson's hurt. Then Russell Wilson comes back in, and he's led them to 3 straight wins. And people are talking about the Steelers as a legitimate contender now. But you're going to get the good with the bad with him. Dak Prescott, you got good and bad with him, too, because he had no weapons to go to except for CeeDee Lamb. Then he gets hurt as well. The Jets have been a disaster, even though Aaron Rodgers is healthy. It's just been all over the place. It's been extremely difficult to predict. And then you've got the rookies involved. Bo Nix is kind of steadily ascending with the Broncos, who have been carried by their defense early in the season, and they've kind of figured out where his strengths lie, which is out in the perimeter and as a creator. And then you've got Jaden Daniels, who's having a fantastic season for the most part, but was limited really significantly for the first time I've seen since way back in week 1 by the Steelers defense that had a great game plan. So it's a chess match. It's always been a chess match. I just feel like defenses have been ahead of offenses more often this year than in years past, but I think a lot of offenses have been limited by health issues, both the quarterback, sometimes the offensive line, sometimes those around them. And some of the familiar suspects that we're used to seeing produce have kind of drifted into the middle pack. I mean, when I do QB index every week, I have a ton of volatility in my rankings because guys are all over the place. Yeah. And I look at Kirk Cousins is up to 13 this week, but he's been in the bottom teams before. And Jalen Hurts fell out of the top 10 weeks ago. And Jordan Love's been up and down. And Dak Prescott went from being a top 6 guy to number 20 because they're just struggling and he's not able to elevate them. So it's just been a ton of volatility in performance from week to week. And I guess that's what, that's manufactured parity. That's what makes the NFL good. And that's why we keep tuning in. But I'll tell you what, it's frustrating for people who are trying to pick games because it's really hard to predict them right now.
It is very hard this year, talking with Nick Shook. I mean, we know that the Browns were a team that had serious aspirations and fell short, but I'd argue that Dallas and the Jets are just right there in terms of falling short of their expectations. What do you make, and now Dallas without Dak, but what do you make of what's going on with the New York Jets?
Oh, man, that is the LeBron effect when it goes south. It is, you get a veteran who you think is going to be the missing piece, is going to lead you to a championship, and you go all in on the short title window, and it just falls apart. And I think it really started defensively. They lost some edge rushers in the offseason. They lose guys like Bryce Huff, who made an impact for them. Hassan Reddick doesn't show up until a couple of weeks ago. They lack consistency on the defensive side of the ball. They're not making plays because that was their strength over the last few years. It was, they have playmakers on offense, and they have a really good defense. They're just a quarterback away. And then they get the quarterback, but the defense kind of disintegrates in small pieces and isn't able to hold up their end of the bargain. And a short leash on a coach that probably got fired too quickly because they weren't producing instead of giving them some patience. And now you're just seeing the effects of all of that combined with the fact that they can't protect Aaron Rodgers. Tyron Smith, who, veteran offensive tackle, great career in the NFL, but has regressed pretty significantly, has had a ton of injuries in his career, does not look like the guy he used to be in Dallas, and has struggled all season to protect him so much that Olu Fashanu ends up replacing him in their most recent game at left tackle, the rookie out of Penn State. And their entire offense has suffered as a result. Rodgers' time to throw has been like 0.2 of a second faster than it was over his previous 4 seasons combined. Like, the offense is just undercut by the fact that they can't protect well. Their scheme isn't very good. Nathaniel Hackett lost his job and would have lost his job entirely and been unemployed if not being Rodgers' friend, and so he just gets demoted and loses his title. And all the changes are just like throwing spaghetti at the wall and hoping, some of it sticks. And at 3-7, much of it has not stuck, especially in a division in which they're essentially out of the race with Buffalo at 8-2. So I don't know where they go from here because they have some young pieces on defense. They've got talent at receiver in Garrett Wilson. They go get Devontae Adams. That has not worked out well. Him and Rodgers have not been on the same page. But again, it's the tried and true lesson. It starts up front. If you can't protect well and you can't block well, everything's going to be difficult, especially the same thing goes for if you can't stop the run and you can't get after the passer with the front four. The same thing's going to be an issue. So I think that's really where it starts for them. They invested in the offseason and try to get better there. It has not produced the results that they hoped for. And Dallas, they just lack weapons. I mean, they had a quiet offseason. We knew that they were going to lack weapons. And they're paying for their lack of activity in the offseason, unfortunately. And this is basically what they look like on paper. My colleague Greg Rosenthal put them on the list as teams that are going to blow up this year and disappoint significantly, and he was absolutely right. And especially now that they don't have a quarterback, they lack teeth in their attack on the offensive side of the ball, and they've been hurt a lot on the defensive side of the ball. They just got Micah Parsons back last week. He made an impact, but only did like percent of snaps, and that's basically what you're going to do. You're going to have a guy on a pitch count when he's coming back from an injury, and he can't make up for all 11 guys in the field. Right. So they're among the disappointing teams. You go on the AFC side and you look at Cincinnati at 4-6. I think that's one team that could actually mount a run. The way that they lost that game to Baltimore was heartbreaking, but I think that they are talented enough. Joe Burrow's having a great year. Yeah. But their defense has not been consistent enough for them, and he's had to kind of carry them. But I think they have enough talent to maybe make a run. But again, what happens every year? We get like 4 to 5 new playoff teams every year because of that manufactured parity that makes the NFL so interesting, and we're seeing it happen again.
You're talking AFC North a little bit there. You mentioned the Bengals. Ravens obviously are a very, very talented offense. That defense does feel like it could be an Achilles heel in the playoffs. But I got to ask you about the Steelers because I'll be honest. I thought that just getting Russell Wilson, I thought Justin Fields played well early this year. Russell Wilson, between Fields or Wilson, it was going to be a massive upgrade over what they had last year, and they were able to win games. They just know how to win. They may not be the most talented team, but they just know how to win, and that's what they do. What do you make of the Steelers sitting here at 7-2?
Yeah, what you just said is exactly why I scoffed at the whole idea that Mike Tomlin might be on a hot seat at the end of last year. Like, I remember he closed his press conference after they lost to the Bills in the playoffs where he was asked about only having 1 year left on his deal, and he just walked away. And I was like, that's exactly what you should do, because you have earned the right to walk away from a question like that. You have turned teams that are mediocre in any other market, in any other franchise, and gotten them to the playoffs purely off of coaching and figuring out a way to make it work on the defensive side of the ball. And what you're seeing again is a coach who has a very good defense, has a lot of talent. They went and added more talent when they got Preston Smith at the deadline. Then you've got a coach who works in tandem with a GM who gives him not one but 2 options at quarterback. And then he's like, you know what, we're going to go with the kid that can run more and maybe isn't as consistent or as effective of a passer because Russ isn't entirely healthy. We have a full season to figure this out. And they coach them to success, and they win games that way. They're ugly. They lean on their defense. They play ball control, and it works. And then Russ comes in and opens up the passing game. Now, the crazy thing about them is they're one of the most consistent teams in the NFL right now. Obviously, the record indicates that. We have not seen enough bad from Russell Wilson yet to tank a game. But the win over Washington, he was wildly inconsistent. I mean, misses guys over the middle of the field, then drops dimes on Pickens and Mike Williams, another new addition, for a key touchdown. That's who they've been with him for the most part, very much a second half of a game team. But those teams are scary because if their defense is good enough to keep them in games and then figure it out on offense, and that stuff usually travels well. And I think they're going to be in the fight all the way through. I wouldn't put them as a Super Bowl contender, but they're one of those teams that you're not going to want to run into in the playoffs, provided they stay healthy. And again, that just points to consistency and continuity from a front office level all the way down to head coaching. And they've been one of the best franchises at it in the history of the NFL. We know about how they've only had 3 coaches since the 60s. It's intentional continuity, and it's paying off in droves for them right now. And they're going to be a tough out no matter who they face.
All right, we're going to get you out of here on this one, and I appreciate your time. All right, give me one team that is currently not in the AFC and one team that is currently not in the NFC if the season were to end today that's going to make the playoffs.
If the season were to end today,
if the season,
they're going to make
somebody who's not in, if the season were over today, like for example, in the AFC, on the outside looking in right now, would be the Colts, Bengals, Dolphins, Jets, Patriots, Browns, Titans, Raiders, Jags.
That's going to be the Bengals.
I would agree with that.
Because I have no confidence in any of the other teams. The Colts, I think, made a short-sighted decision going to Joe Flacco. As much as everybody in Cleveland loves Joe Flacco for what he did last year, I think that they pulled the plug on Anthony Richardson a little too quickly, and we've kind of seen them pay for that decision the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Denver is going to make it interesting, but I think that as it stands right now, they'd still get in there. But they're an interesting team to watch. So I think the Bengals are the one team that are probably equipped best to make a late-season run to the playoffs. Miami, don't take your eyes off of them just yet. That win last night was pretty big for them.
Yes.
They could figure it out. The schedule sets up that they could make a run on the back half of the season. But I would put more stock in the Bengals right now just because Joe Burrow's playing great football. On the NFC side, one of my teams that they have, Tampa Bay is one of those teams.
You've got
out there
right now on the outside looking in, Niners at 5-4, Bears, Rams, Seahawks at 4-5, Bucks at 4-6, Cowboys 3-6, Saints, Panthers, Giants. I mean, the Niners are going to make the playoffs, I think.
Yeah, the Niners are the team that I would pick with the most confidence.
Yeah.
But this Bucks team, I like them. I like what they do. I think they've paid for poor coaching decisions situationally over the last couple of weeks, especially that overtime loss to Kansas City. They lost Chris Godwin, which is a massive loss.
Yep.
But they get Mike Evans back soon. Baker's playing good football there. They are an offensive team, and if he gets Mike Evans back, it's going to be a boost. Investments in Bucky Irving and even Sean Tucker, one of my favorite unheralded running backs, right next to Ray Davis in the NFL right now. They've kind of gotten their ground game going a little bit too. So I like them. But confidence-wise, like if I'm putting my life on the line, I'm going to go with San Francisco because they're a second-half team. They've been the second-half team throughout the entirety of the Kyle Shanahan era, and I think they're going to figure it out. And if they don't win the NFC West, they'll get in as a wild card team, and they're right behind Arizona. So it would go San Francisco, but keep an eye on the Buccaneers.
It feels like the Bucs are going to have to win their division to get in, and they're currently down 2 to the Falcons and lost both head-to-head, so they're really down 3. They've got they bye week this week, then they go at Giants. They could win that. At Panthers could win that. Home Raiders. At Chargers, at Cowboys, home Panthers, home Saints. I mean, they have one hard game left, which is the Chargers.
Yeah, those are all wins except for Chargers, I think. And divisional games get weird, but if they do get healthier on the offensive side of the ball, losing Tristan Wirfs in that game really hurt them in their most recent loss. They're really just a scrappy bunch, and so I would definitely keep an eye on them on the outside looking in as a team that could make a late season push.
Falcons have at Broncos, bye week, home Chargers, at Vikings, at Raiders, home Giants, at Commanders, home Panthers. So theirs isn't bad either, given that they've got a 3-game lead. That's going to be a fun one. Well, Nick Shook, this is a blast, as it always is. Appreciate the unfortunate at times, the tough honesty, and also the perspective on the league. And everybody follow him on X at the Nick Shook. Nick Shook, everybody.
Appreciate you as always. Great time talking with you.
Keep it rolling. 8-3. Let's go. Keep this young quarterback locked in. Go get a championship. Let's do it. All right.
Keep an eye out for Noah Conrad on Twitch, everybody. He's got it's at the Nick Shook on Twitch, but Noah Conrad's the name of the star. Watch out for him.
Watch out for Noah Conrad leading the team to the promised land. All right, we'll be back with more Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet, a sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns, now live in Ohio. Boost your game day this season with the Bally Bet Sportsbook app. Place your first bet of $50 or more, and you'll get $150 back in bonus bets. Bally Bet, an official sports betting partner of the Cleveland Browns. All right, let's go around the sports world now. The Bears have reportedly parted ways with offensive coordinator Shane Waldron per Adam Schefter. Gibbe?
Yeah, hi. Good to see you.
Good to see you. You can come sit in here if you want.
I know. I figure in the 2 o'clock hour we'll shift some things around. Way to fall on that grenade, buddy.
Yeah, I'm surprised the Eberflus is still there. I guess they're trying to keep it together. It's and again, now you're going to have a quarterback in Caleb Williams who most likely is going to be on his third offensive coordinator at the start of his second season. That's a tough situation for young quarterbacks, and I think we certainly saw that here with Baker. Baker every year it was a new play caller for him, and that's very, very difficult till his final 2 seasons. Cowboys owner and general manager Jerry Jones not happy about complaints about the curtain. He said that's the least of our problems there, and the sun. We know where the sun is. That should be an advantage for us. I mean, if you guys are blinded, that's not good.
Are you sure about that?
I'm not sure about it. He also announced that Dak Prescott is out for the year and Cooper Rush will be the starter moving forward. I don't know about you guys. I've seen plenty of Cooper Rush. I'd like to see, is Trey Lance any good? And if not, then what are we even doing here at this point? Like, at least find out. Can he play in this league or not? Cooper Rush's line this past week is one of the craziest stat lines I've ever seen in my life. And I really don't even know, honestly, what to make of it. Cooper Rush, let me pull this up because I'm pretty sure I have this right. I think he averaged 2 yards per attempt in this game. 13 of 23 for 45 yards.
That's going to make CeeDee Lamb really happy.
No, CeeDee Lamb isn't. He had 6 catches for 21 yards. The longest reception of the day was 6 yards. Their longest pass completion of the day was 10 yards. They had 1 reception of 10 yards out of 17 catches.
So here's my...
That's insane to me.
This goes back to the
That feels like I could be... I have the possibility of doing that.
But this goes back to Dak Prescott does have some injury past.
Yeah.
Like, this.
It's hard when you can't when you pay a quarterback that much. You can't have a great backup. It just doesn't work. And the truth is, your season's likely over anyway. I mean, Dak Prescott, the year before, played full seasons in 2 of the last 3. He had a 12-game season in there as well. Last year, he threw for 4,516 yards, 36 touchdowns, and 9 picks. Like, second in the MVP voting. You got to pay him, and you pay him that. Like, you can't have. Why would you allocate more money to that room? You got young guys on rookie deals. Obviously, that's all you can do.
I don't know. I mean, it goes. It's
or
the same,
veteran minimums. Cooper Rush is on a veteran
Dolphins.
Minimum for sure.
What do you like? How do you not have an insurance policy on this?
So Cooper Rush, when he stepped in for Dak in 2022, they went 4-1. Maybe they were thinking, okay, he was able to get us through there. He could do it. He's 5-2 all time as a starter, 60% completions. 9 touchdowns, 6 picks, rating of 79. And he knows the offense. They're obviously comfortable with him. But, yeah, it's not great. But that's kind of, unfortunately, that's just the world that you live in when you have the quarterbacks that make that much money. There aren't good backups. There just aren't.
Well, now you're looking at...
trying to think
I mean, you got 3 more years.
Like, the backup for Lamar is Josh Johnson.
Oh, I know.
If he went down, curtains. So unfortunately, that's the way that you got to do it in the NFL.
I just think that you should rethink that because
you only have so much money, Gibbe.
Yeah, but you have
this isn't baseball.
You have 18-week seasons.
I know, but I think the thought is if you have that guy with that salary, if you have the guy, even if he gets hurt, that's probably it. Like, there isn't somebody who's going to come in and steward you to a Super. These teams are thinking Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, if you've got Lamar, you've got Dak Prescott, you've got Joe Burrow. You're not paying a backup because if those guys go down, they're the franchise. That's it. And you can't afford to, really. You'd rather have that, that money going to try to help out the roster overall.
I don't know. Dallas Cowboy fan might have a different opinion today.
But what are they going to do this season anyway?
Well,
They
number
weren't
one,
winning
you
with
signed
Dak.
Ezekiel Elliott over Derrick Henry.
Well, they should have spent. But then again, that's money that should have been spent there, but not on a backup quarterback because it doesn't matter. Adam Schefter saying upon appeal, the NFL hearing officer Jordy Nelson, love that Jordy Nelson's doing this, has rescinded the $16,000 fine levied against Ravens linebacker Roquan Smith for his alleged unnecessary roughness on Chris Godwin on the play that ended with the Bucs wide receiver dislocating his ankle per source. They made such a big deal about the hip drop tackle. It has not really been a big deal. You hate to see injuries, but at the same time, your job is to get the guy to the ground. I mean, that's the job of tackling. I think I was shocked that Nick Bosa didn't just drop his weight and he would have yanked Baker down and allowed that play to be made. They went on to win the game, but maybe that's what he was worried about, was a fine or a penalty for doing that.
I'm sure it's in their minds.
It's got to be. I mean, unfortunately, it's got to be. It's got to be. Cavs 12-0, best start in franchise history. They beat the Bulls 119-113. They're playing. It's awesome. I mean, this is one of the best starts in league history. They've won 12 in 20 days. It's the most by a new coach with a new team ever. It's the most by the Cavs ever, right, to start a season. I mean,
yeah,
eighth best in league history. Eighth best start in league history.
There it is. Top
Thanks,
8
Kev.
all time. The Warriors' best was what, like 24 or 25? 24?
24, no.
That's outrageous.
That
What year was
they
that,
went
Kev?
on to go like 73-9.
The year they lost to us. Yeah, that was the year they lost to us in the championship.
15, 16? Yeah.
Yep, after they went 73-9 and beat the Bulls record for best record.
Jeez Louise. Listen, I mean, if you're the Cavs, all you got to do is go 62-8, right, the rest of the way, and you can set the record.
Some good odds.
You're 12-0. You're on pace. Just go 12-0 5 more times.
Okay,
Be
that's
great.
all.
Be sitting at 60-0.
It's fun. You hire a
it's so
coach.
fun.
The goal is to score points, kids, and score more than the other team.
I got to
And that's
tell
what
you,
they do.
I do miss the days when local basketball and local baseball were just if you had a television, you had the ability to watch them.
It's quite the challenge.
Yeah, I don't quite get it. It's a bummer. I would have loved or there need to be more national games. It should be easier. I don't know, especially for a team that's 12-0. They should be, and when LeBron was with the Heat or even with the Lakers, they were on national TV every week, at least once. This Cavs team needs to be on national television. I'd like.
Brian
to see it.
Windhurst did tell the Really Big Show this morning that you can look for the Cavs to maybe being put into more national games here coming up.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. Wendy, of course, always on it. All right. Rumpke Waste and Recycling is the recycling leader. They've invested over $100 million to build North America's largest, most technologically advanced recycling center right here in Ohio. Visit rumpke.com to learn more about tours and how this facility helps grow our circular economy. When we come back, hour number 2, the Hoff, back from Germany. He joins us for the Hoff half hour. Coming up next on Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Bally Bet.
This fall,
You're down, stacking here.
Hour number 2 of Cleveland Browns Daily brought to you by Bally Bet. Don't forget that OBM is the preferred copier and document services provider for the Cleveland Browns, who can tackle any size office. Call 216-485-2000 or visit ohiobusinessmachines.com. The Hoff, Joe Thomas, joins the show now on the Twisted Tea Hotline, brought to you by Twisted Tea Hard Iced Tea, an official sponsor of the Cleveland Browns. Keep it twisted, Cleveland. Hoff, it really appeared that it was like the prodigal son had returned to Munich over this past weekend. What happened? How was it? Give us some stories. It seemed like just pure joy.
It was absolutely pure joy. The amount of people that I got to see, friends, teammates, coaches, just catching up and talking about what they've been doing, what they're going to be doing, and of course having a few beers. It was really just a wonderful experience being out there. And then of course the NFL game. It's really a lot like the Super Bowl. I got a chance to do the color for one of the London games this year, and it was a great experience. I loved it. But
Yep.
The NFL really pulls out all the stops when they go out to Munich, and it feels like a Super Bowl. I mean, with all the entertainment they had MGK performing at halftime. They really want to make sure that they understand we love you, Germany. We know that there's huge football fans and that the NFL is a huge market, and they're trying to go all out so that every experience out in Germany is one to remember.
I mean, the crowd singing, like with less than 2 minutes to go in a one-score game, just belting out, I think it was Neil Diamond at the time, was incredible. That crowd was just nuts.
Yeah, this is not a inexperienced crowd. These guys are used to doing decades of Oktoberfest where everybody gets together, they sing along. Obviously, Germany has a huge and rich soccer tradition, so they're used to getting together as a crowd and singing. So it was really, really unique, I would say, from an NFL experience, because if you go out there, obviously they really know the game well, so they know how to cheer and they know when to cheer. But then they throw in the little soccer culture, and then you get a little bit of the German flair with everybody getting together and singing all their favorite Oktoberfest songs. It's really something that you need to do at least once if you're an NFL fan, of just the moment. It's up there to me with an experience like going to the Super Bowl.
It's probably a little more, honestly, raucous and a little more exciting from a crowd standpoint than the Super Bowl, which is a lot of corporate sponsors. This is people just getting after it. Would you say that the Munich game has more beer consumption than the average game here in America?
Now, that's a tough one, because the average game in America, they're drinking a lot of beer too, but I think the Germans, it's kind of their favorite pastime, right? It's kind of part of the culture. I mean, the way that they sell their steins, the beer in 1 liter steins, which is like three beers, it's pretty hard to not drink a lot of beer when everybody in the crowd's got a pretzel the size of a hubcap and a stein of beer that's worth 3 for every time you go back and refill it. So it's a pretty cool experience. But like you said, it's just diehard football fans from all over Europe. And when you go to the Super Bowl, sometimes it can be a little more subdued until the game is really tight or there's big moments, because it's an expensive ticket to go to the Super Bowl, and so you get a lot of the corporate folks. But for this, there's a lot of just diehard NFL fans that have never had a chance to see a game, and this is the closest they can be, and so they're cheering from start to finish.
Well, I have to imagine, too, for you, going back to a place that you made your home for the better part of this year had to be awesome. And I think it's your second time back, but is it wild that now you just know Munich so well? It's like a second home?
Yeah, it's really cool, especially because I reflect back on a couple years ago being out there. My very first time in Germany, you and I, we talked about going back to the motherland and the experience that you had when you went back home. And for the first time, I shouldn't say back home, but that's what it is, because that's where our roots are. And that's an experience in and of itself,
totally.
but then to be able to kind of enjoy football, which has been my identity forever, and then just to see how the people, the Germans, they really have just fallen in love with the game of football and NFL. And then for me, being able to be the tour guide for some of my NFL friends that were out there, that's really fun. That's one of the things that I love to do. I like to be the guy that gets people together and that facilitates the party and shows people a good time. So it was right up my alley, being able to show people all my favorite restaurants and bakeries and favorite places to go and things to do when you're in Munich. And it's not hard when you're in a great city like Munich.
No, it certainly isn't. You also did some work on Eisen show. You met my buddy TJ. Now Eisen on the broadcast. I don't know if you heard this, but he made it out to a few of the local beer gardens, and Kurt Warner's like, "How do you know about that?" And he's like, "Listen, I can go out here and have a few beers. We got to do it."
Yeah, it's cool, and I think that's one of the things that you notice from the NFL people's side. Even the top level executives. I got a chance to sit next to some of the top executives from NFL. That one of the guys, Brett Gosper, he was the guy that kind of got flag football in the Olympics, and he kind of chooses a lot of the different international locations, and get a chance to sit next to him and chat with him. And I think for those people, this feels like a vacation, because typically they go anywhere, especially Kurt and Rich and stuff. They can't go out in public, right? They just get mobbed. It's just too much. It would be way too much attention. But for these folks, apparently the NFL over in Germany, they love these guys, but I don't know if they understand, like, hey, you can go up and like get their autograph and picture it. Sure. And they definitely keep their distance a little bit, and maybe they don't quite exactly recognize them. They'd recognize them in the booth, but it gives them a very relaxed feeling, like they're on vacation, like they're in a different country, right? There's a reason a lot of the celebrities in the States, they go and live over there, right? Because they're not getting hassled as much, and they can kind of be a normal person. And so you go to the Hofbrauhaus, like right when you walk in the door, on the right side is the whole Eisen crew, Kurt Warner. I'm sitting there talking to TJ and Rich Eisen standing there, and there's several of the NFL people that would just not be able to be possible if you did that in the States, because it would just be a mob of people. But here they are sitting there drinking a boot and chit-chatting about the NFL, and occasionally a fan would come up and stuff, but they were always very respectful. So it was just cool seeing everybody kind of let their hair down from the NFL side.
That is awesome. All right, we turn our attention now back to the Browns. We've talked already. We know about where this season stands, but I have to ask you, as somebody who has gotten to know you for well over a decade now and been able to, see the way that you went about your business and things that people know about, and some things I think you maybe have shared after you retired, but in terms of what you were willing to play through to play for your team, to hear what Jed Wills said yesterday, I'll leave it as open-ended as possible. What was your reaction to those comments being made publicly?
Well, the first thing I saw was the printed quotes. And, whenever you see something like that, you see like a clip, you're like, okay, I need to make sure before I get too excited about this. What was the context? What was he talking about? So I went and found the video of him talking to the media, and it didn't make it much better, in spite of what I had hoped.
You're right.
And so I'll first start with sort of if I was him or maybe one of his teammates, and I was standing there and they were asking me about it the next day, in the locker room, right? So sort of trying to find a way to defend him. And I think the best thing I could say on their behalf, if I was standing there, is that maybe he didn't understand what he was trying to say, and that it was really just a Freudian slip. Like what he said about making a business decision, and then he wouldn't play through injuries. I don't think he understands the gravity of an NFL lineman, like saying those things in the locker room in front of his teammates. And now I'll maybe pivot a little bit and kind of put my own hat back on. And one of the things that I prided myself the most throughout my career was just being there for my teammates, even when the playoffs wasn't on the line, and even when, going out there at less than 100% would maybe have me make a few more mistakes than I normally would. But it's hard to imagine that at this point in the season, anybody is feeling 100%. It's the NFL. Everybody's hurt. That's part of being an NFL player, learning how to play with pain, play through the pain, and be at your best. I mean, if this team ever goes on an NFL Super Bowl run, and Jed is potentially wherever he's going to be, this place or somewhere else, plays in the Super Bowl, that's a lot of games. You're going to be really beat up. And if you're not willing or able to be able to go out and block that pain out and play good football, not only for yourself but for your teammates, then I'm not sure how you can ever be an effective lineman for anybody in this league, because that's just the way it is. Like, everybody is hurt. And in order to be a great player, you always have to put your teammates first. And as a lineman, all we can do is block the people in front of us and set the table for the quarterbacks, for the receivers, and the running backs to be able to do their job. And if I'm not doing that, and the guy out there is doing a worse job than I am, then I feel like I'm letting those guys down. And that's why I always wanted to be out there, no matter what I felt like, no matter what the situation was, because I wanted to be there for those teammates so that they could do their job. Because I know Jed's in a contract year, but there's a lot of other people that are, maybe this could be the last few games of their career. And you got to go out and do it for them, because could be their last opportunity as well. And so the idea of making a business decision and deciding that you're not healthy enough to play, that didn't sit very well with me, obviously. And I think as an NFL player, you got to understand that you have just got to find a way to play. Like it's part of being a lineman. It's not like if I'm a receiver and my hamstring's at 70%, I physically can't get open because I can't run fast enough. I can't cut fast enough to get separation from my quarterback. Or if I'm a running back and I can't hit that last gear, like I'm not effective. But as a lineman, where you're effective is with your brain, with your technique. And that's why you see guys playing so long, because when you master the technique and you're able to block out everything else, you're able to still do your job even though you're not feeling healthy. And that's why I was able to go out and play a bunch of snaps, even when I had torn ligaments in my knee and back spasms and all those other things. Is because in the end, it's about your decision-making and your technique. Like, it doesn't really matter if you're not as quick or as fast as you once were. Like, your mind is what's the most important thing. And I think it was pretty clear hearing those things that the mistakes that we've seen throughout his career, lack of focus, lack of understanding how he fits, lack of communication, it shows up when he says that he doesn't feel like he's healthy enough to be able to go out there and play and block that out and still get his job done.
Right. And it just, I guess my question was, I knew what your mentality was going to be towards that. I think you literally lived it, so it wouldn't be hard for anybody to figure out, where your mind would be. But that feels like one of those comments that, does that lead to uncomfortable conversations in the locker room? Does that, if, for example, if
I would think so.
A young player said that while you were on the football team, we know what Joel plays through, all and has for years as well. Like, do you think that leads to a tough conversation?
I would think so. And you wonder if at this point the writing's already on the wall for his time in Cleveland, and maybe some of the teammates are like, it's not worth our time because, he's already been benched. DeJuan's been playing well. I don't know if he sees the field anymore this season. Like, I don't know from a locker room standpoint if they're thinking that it's worth their energy and time to like even have that conversation. But certainly, let's just say this was player X, you would have to have that conversation, because to be a great teammate, it means you're putting your teammates before yourself. And when you say you're making a big business decision and you're not going to go out and play less than 100%, you're telling all the teammates that my own pocketbook is more important than whatever else that you guys have going on, that you have going on. And I would just look to Joel Bitonio and I'd say, you think Joel feels like he's 100%? Like,
no.
Dude is injured. Like,
no.
He's still going out and doing it. And that's why, as a lineman, you get paid the way we get paid. That's why it's hard to find great linemen, because to do the stuff that we got to do, you got to do it when you're injured.
Yeah. Yeah. And on so many levels, I thought the comment was baffling, and whoever was advising him to say that, you're in the last year of your deal too. I mean, that is a comment that I would imagine is going to be a part of his free agency process, and that is not going to be helpful to it.
I don't know if anybody's ever uttered the words, I made a business decision and it came out smelling like roses, because it just doesn't make sense. Like, that's why I said at the beginning, like, can he have possibly understood what he said when he said that? Because even if that's what you were doing, if you were saying, I don't want this to hurt, this knee to like linger during the season, I want to get healthy going into free agency or whatever, like, you still wouldn't say, I made a business decision. You'd say, I didn't feel like I was healthy enough to go out there and help my team.
And help the team, right.
But yeah, like, you always have to put the team first, but then he followed it up with, like, I would never go out and play less than 100% no matter what it was. So, like, so if you're at 95% and your team's in the Super Bowl, you're going to sit out? Like, I think you have to treat every game like it is your Super Bowl, and that's why the NFL's hard. It's not easy, and sometimes it's not fun being a lineman, because you're not going to feel great, and you're going to have to go out, and sometimes, you know what, playoffs are not on the line. It's not the Super Bowl, but you've got to do the things the same way every single time you step on that field. Otherwise, you are going to have a hard time focusing on your job, completing my task, blocking the guy across from me if you're thinking about all this other stuff.
Right. And well, hopefully, and kind of to bring this full circle to talk about kind of real world practicality and practical application of what you're talking about. The Browns had the bye, but now they're going to play 2 games in 4 days. You go down to New Orleans on a Sunday, and then you come back the following Thursday, and you take on the Pittsburgh Steelers here. So when you knew you had a stretch like that, I think it's very likely that most people will not be 100% for that Thursday nighter against the Pittsburgh Steelers. How did you prepare for that? What was your approach to those situations?
So when you go and you turn around and you play a Thursday game or you play a game on a short week, it becomes 100% about how can I recover as fast as I possibly could. And some of the modalities that I used to do that helped were get in the cryo chamber, right? And like try to healing as much as you can, like your nutrition, your sleep. Obviously that's paramount, but trying to get in the ice tub, get in a massage therapist to help work out any of that soreness, those knots. It's sometimes hard to be back to full speed, like, and things like that because you're just banged up.
Right.
But you can find other ways to get blood flow and to maintain the level of cardio that you need by, I know the Browns, they have a bike and they've got like a stair climber and they've got a couple other cardio things inside of an altitude chamber. So doing something like that so you could still get those lungs working, but you're not working your body quite as much, but just doing everything you could to get the blood flowing, to get recovered as quick as possible. But then also you have to, like, there's the mental, like you're compressing a week of preparation into just a few days. So you're watching a little bit extra film. And so you're trying to double dip, right? You're taking your iPad into the cold tub. You're taking your notes that you're making and you're sitting on the bike when you're doing that. So you're trying to do 2 things at once because you just don't have the time you normally would in a regular week.
All right, Hoff, 8 games to go for the Browns. What are a couple things that you really hope to see over these final 8 games?
Well, I'd like to see them get back to running the football more effectively, and I'm hoping that with some of the linemen coming back and getting healthy and Nick Chubb maybe knocking off some of the rust and starting to get that knee feeling back to normal, they'll be able to be a little bit more effective running the ball. I think that would be huge, and I think that would really help the young receivers, right? I think at some point it would be nice to see DTR, give him some game reps, give him some experience, figure out what you got there. Doesn't sound like it'll be this week, but maybe Kevin Stefanski and company are kind of trying to figure out, all right, let's ease him into it. Let's start to give him more reps in practice so that you're not just throwing him in there right away. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there because I guarantee they want to see DTR a little bit at quarterback to kind of figure out, can he be somebody that's part of the plan going down the line? But I'd also love to continue to see the development of Cedric Tillman. I think he's done a great job with the opportunity that he's had since they traded away Amari Cooper. And I'd love to see him become that guy that we thought that he could be when we drafted him, but he just didn't have those opportunities. So I think offensively, that's what you'd love to see. And on defense, I want him to communicate better in the secondary. Like, let's figure out what the issues were at the beginning of the season and throughout this first part of the season. And let's shore that up because this is too talented of a secondary to leave guys wide open.
Yeah.
So I think if you're able to kind of tighten up some of those things where you feel good about the different units going into next season, I think that's really the biggest thing that you want to accomplish here the last half of the season.
All right, Hoff, let's talk AFC North quickly here. Bengals lose a wild one to the Ravens. They've lost a wild one, if you think about it, to the Chiefs. They lost a wild one to the Commanders. They lose this one to the Ravens. They're not out of it at 4-6, but they got some work to do. When you kind of look at this division, Steelers right now 7-2, Ravens 7-3, Bengals 4-6, Browns obviously 2-7. What do you make of this division? Do you still think it's possible for 3 teams to get into the postseason?
Well, I think it's a 2-horse race. I don't really think the Bengals are going to get into the postseason. I know with Joe Burrow and their offense, it can kind of keep them in games, but their defense has just been so poor this season that I don't see how they can win enough down the stretch to really make any type of noise. And you saw it again against the Ravens. Like, Burrow's going to be Burrow. But if you don't have a defense that can get a stop occasionally down the stretch, it's really tough to win against good teams in the NFL. And the AFC, probably not as strong as the NFC this season, but you're going to be playing against a lot of quality teams down the stretch. And if you're not able to stop somebody, it's only going to get worse. The bleeding gets worse because you get more injured going down the stretch. Teams realize what your problems are, and they just spam them. They just keep throwing at whatever your issues are, and they don't really have any answers at this point. And I think for the Bengals, like, it's just going to be one of those seasons they look back on and feel like they've let one slip, because it's one of those seasons in Joe Burrow's prime. You got Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins, you got a lot of talent on that offense, but because the defense was just so bad, they were never able to really be contenders.
How do the Steelers do it, Hoff? I mean, they just know how to win. It's crazy. It's wild. 7-2. 7-2.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of great answers. I know that in my mind, when they signed Russell Wilson, I was like, crap, because that was the big question mark for them, was, who's going to be the quarterback. And you knew they were going to have a good defense, but could they score enough points to be relevant? And then turns out, well, they didn't even really need Russell Wilson to keep him relevant. And then now Russell comes back, and even though he got sort of run out of Denver, he's still a good quarterback. He can still make those great throws down the field when he needs to. He's really good in that play action scheme, and he fits well with play defense, run the ball, and then take some shots down the field. That's still something he can be really good at, and extending plays. So I think they're one of those teams where you scratch your head, but when you have great coaching consistently, and Tomlin's been there a long time, he's got the trust of those players. They believe in him. They don't make the little mistakes in situations that, I'll take you to when I was in Germany. I was really impressed with Carolina, because you look at the roster, they don't have a lot of great players, but in critical situations, they're not making mistakes. And the Giants did. I think 3 times in the red zone, the Giants turned the ball over or missed a field goal. And the Panthers, in the last 2 games, they played the Saints and then they played the Giants. Like, they were kind of outgained, and really, if you look at the stats, you're like, how did they win that game? But they get to the red zone, they score touchdowns. They don't turn the ball over. Like, they're very fundamentally solid in situations, and that's what the Steelers have been for a long time, and that's what the Patriots were forever, right? As great as Brady was, like, they wouldn't have won all those games had they not been a really cohesive unit that didn't make mistakes in the red zone. They didn't turn the football over. They didn't give up big plays because of communication problems in the secondary. And that's what makes good football teams. And when you combine that with good talent, that's how you give yourself a chance to potentially go on a long run in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's wild. Here we are. 8 games to go. Steelers, Ravens on top. Bengals struggling. Browns struggling. It certainly has been wild. Hoff, can't wait to see you in about, about 8 days. We'll welcome you back here. Here's your other home. You've got homes everywhere now, Hoff. You got homelands, you got home states, you got real home states, you got it all.
It's nice to be able to travel to several different places that are all awesome and enjoy friends, family, football, and some beer every now and then.
Indeed,
and Vino when I'm with the Great Z.
That's course. Right, baby. Yeah, I was gonna say you better bring your Vino drinking shoes with you. I'm sure you will.
Nice.
All right, the Great Hoff, everybody. Thanks so much, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Z.
All right, when we come back, we're going to do a little better or worse, higher or lower with NFL playoff tiers from ESPN's NFL Nation. And that will probably take us to the conclusion of our glorious show. So we're going to have some fun with that. Gibbe will be back. You're listening to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Bally Bet, a sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns, now live in Ohio. Howard Hanna is the official real estate partner of the Cleveland Browns. Our exclusive buyer agent is there to help you navigate the field, save time and money, and score that winning touchdown. A new home. Win big with the leader in real estate. Visit howardhanna.com/GoBrowns today. The official real estate provider of the Cleveland Browns, Howard Hanna. Time now for a little higher or lower, a.k.a. better or worse, NFL playoff tiers from ESPN's NFL Nation. Go!
Hi.
Hello, Gibby.
Seth Walder in NFL Nation.
Okay.
Putting together. Do you have a copy?
Yeah, right here.
All right, good. NFL playoff tiers 2024, projecting 32 teams in standings.
Okay.
So we can go through some of these. If you want to take one out, you have to replace it with one, but you can't add more. That's my rule.
If I want to take one out.
So there's 4 right now. They have the true Super Bowl contenders.
Okay.
They have 4.
Okay.
You can't add a 5th.
Why not?
Because I said so. Those are the rules today.
But I want to.
Did I not say that he would want to?
But I think there are 5 Super Bowl contenders. Shouldn't we just try
Maybe
to be
there's not.
Aren't we supposed to fill out the most accurate tiers we can, Gibby?
No. I'm not into that.
Okay.
Let's have a little fun.
Well, here's the
Who
thing.
gets hurt by this?
I think the Niners can win the Super Bowl, but I wouldn't put them in here if I had to remove Kansas City, Buffalo, Detroit, or the Ravens. But they should be in that tier.
They're a true Super Bowl contender. You think?
Yes, they're a second-half team. They're very immensely talented. They've been in the Super Bowl, 2 of the last 3 years?
Yeah, I haven't won it, but
But
who's counting?
This is a contender. They are absolutely a contender. They are a team that nobody in the NFC wants.
I don't know
to
if
face
their wide
in the
receiver
playoffs.
keeps going after kickers.
Well, listen, they just got Christian McCaffrey back. I think they're in a pretty good. Spot. I would put the 40. I think there are 5 teams that can win the Super Bowl, and that is a full stop.
Really?
Yeah, and that is
So
those are the 5.
The Chiefs, the Bills, the Lions, the Ravens, and the Niners.
Yep.
Who were in tier 4 according to this.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I didn't see that coming.
See, isn't that more fun that way? That was a
I'll let you put the 49ers in.
2-tier
Fine.
leapfrog.
I'm not budging on anything else.
Okay, fine.
Tier 2 are playoff locks.
Okay.
Eagles, Texans, Squealers. It pains me, but I feel like, yeah. Well, number 1, the Texans, yeah. The rest of that division is
win
garbage.
their division.
Yeah.
The Steelers' schedule gets a little bit tougher, to be honest. Let's look at their schedule here. I think that the cushion they've built for themselves.
I love the Hoff. I'm not sure I agree with them that the Bengals are out.
All right.
I
think they can make it. So Steelers have home Ravens. Steelers have won 4 in a row. They have home Ravens, at Browns, at Bengals, home Browns, at Eagles, at Ravens, home Chiefs, home Bengals.
Do they have to play everybody in the division?
Yeah, they have not played a division game yet.
Yeah, they haven't had a division game yet.
So that is not an easy schedule. You would say right now, looking at this schedule, that we're the easiest game on their schedule left.
And that's on a short week, which you throw that
after
out.
the Ravens.
Yeah.
And it's here.
I love that.
Then they go at Bengals, home Browns, at Eagles, at Ravens, home Chiefs, home Bengals. And the Bengals are going to be playing for something. It is not an easy schedule. They're at 7-2. So let's just say even if they went 3-4, or 3 and what? That'd be 3 and 5.
Yeah.
That still puts them at 10-7, which is going to make the playoffs.
Eagles, Ravens, Chiefs also in the span of 10 days.
Yeah, they're fine. They're fine. I agree. They're going to make it. Eagles are.
But they might not have their usual November, December swoon. Well, they might have a swoon.
No, they're going to have a swoon.
They're actually going to have a swoon. Normally, they're playing their best football in November and December.
They're going to
flip
swoon,
on a switch,
and
then we're all in trouble.
I do think they're in. And then this is going to be a bold one. I'm going to move another team up. I'm going to move.
There are rules.
Another team up into the locks.
I mean, of course the Texans are locks.
The Atlanta Falcons are a lock. Falcons are a lock. I realize
that division's garbage.
They're
too.
up 3 games on that division, basically. And now the Bucs have a very easy schedule. We went over the first hour. But the Falcons' schedule is not. They're at 6-4 right now. They've got at Broncos, then a bye week, home Chargers, at Vikings. So that's tough. Let's say they go 1-2 there, so that would put them at 7-6. If they do better than that, then they would be at 8-5, and then it's goodnight, Irene. Then they go at Raiders. That should be a win, so 8 wins. Home Giants, 9. At Commanders, tough. Home, I mean, they're getting to 10 wins, I think, at a minimum. They get the Panthers at home, and I think they could do better than that.
And they've already beaten the Tampa Bay twice. Yeah, so they own the tiebreaker.
Yes.
So I would put them in Houston. Yeah, of course your playoff locks.
Yeah, so those are the locks.
Barring a complete collapse.
So 5 Super Bowl contenders. Now, the Niners are not currently a lock, but I do think they will make it. Then those 4. Barring a collapse, I couldn't agree more with this one, which is Commanders, Vikings, Chargers, who are definitely in the driver's seat. And then we're leaning yes would be Packers, Arizona. Now, here's the problem, is that in the NFC, that means that they currently have...
Well, that doesn't make any sense.
You have 1 is Detroit, 2 are the Eagles,
okay,
3 are the Falcons, 4 Washington, 5 Vikings, 6 Atlanta, 7
is either Cardinals or Niners.
Green Bay, 8 with the Cardinals. Is that even counting the Niners? Detroit is 1.
No.
Philly is 2. Atlanta would be 3. Washington 4. Minnesota 5. Packers 6. Cardinals 7. Niners 8. So one of these teams that we would say are all in cannot make it.
Correct.
So the Packers are a game up on the Niners. Cardinals are a game up on the Niners. Let me see when they play head-to-head, because they already beat the Niners once. So they play Week 18 in Arizona. They beat the Niners head-to-head, though, in a massive collapse by the Niners. Cardinals go at Seattle, at Minnesota, home Seattle, home Patriots, at Panthers, at Rams, home Niners. So that's not the easiest schedule, but not
Seattle
terrible.
cut their leading tackler?
They did?
Yeah, their linebacker, leading tackler, they cut him.
Huh. Niners go home Seattle,
self-scout for you.
At Green Bay, at Buffalo. If they go 2-1, they're in for sure. Home Bears, home Rams, at Dolphins, home Lions, at Cardinals. They do not have an easy schedule, but I still think they are a Super Bowl contender. They just have got to get in. And then let's see the Packers schedule. Packers go, bye week was last week. Then they go, bye week's this week. Is this week 10?
Yeah, week 11.
We're on to week 11,
This
right?
is week 11.
Okay, so Packers go at Bears, home Niners, home Dolphins, at Lions, at Seahawks, home Saints, at Vikings, home Bears. Not the easiest either, with the Niners, Lions, at Seattle, at Minnesota.
So, in the first 4 tiers on the AFC side, they've got 6 teams.
Yep, so you got 1,
Chiefs,
2,
Bills,
3,
Ravens, Texans, Squealers, Chargers.
6. Right.
That leaves 3 teams in Tier 5 competing for that final spot. I like the Bengals' chances.
I'm going to cross the Colts off this list.
Yes.
They go to Stranger Things.
The Fighting Yellowstones.
Yeah, they go to Stranger Things.
Come on.
And that's where the Rams have to go to.
I'm not sold on the Broncos, and that would leave you.
So it's Bengals, Broncos.
Bengals.
I mean, listen, you get a short field goal in. You're at 6-4. You're 2 games up. That probably feels pretty good to you there. Let me look at one thing real quickly, because don't the Bengals and the Broncos play, right? Have they played yet this year? They have to play.
I don't know if they've played yet.
I'm looking right now. They play the Broncos at home week 17. So the Bengals go at the Chargers, then a bye week. Home Steelers, at Cowboys, at Titans.
Let me look at this.
Home Browns, home Broncos, at Steelers. What?
That week 17, we have a primetime game on Sunday night that could move. They could put the Bengals, Broncos in. That could be a winner to the playoffs.
Could be. And then they go at Steelers.
Unless we ruin everybody's year.
Their schedule, Chargers, if they can, that's going to be a big game on Sunday Night Football.
It is.
Then they're home Steelers, at Dallas, at Tennessee. You feel like those should both be wins. Home Browns, they'll be favored in that game. And then it's home Broncos at Steelers. So their schedule is not terrible down the stretch. Let's see what Denver has. Denver's got a 1-game lead on them. Denver goes home Falcons. It's going to be a big game for them. At Raiders, home Browns, bye week, home Colts, and then they finish tough. At Chargers, at Bengals, home Chiefs. Now, Chiefs might be resting everybody in week 18. They might have that 1 seed locked up if they can keep a 2-game lead over the Bills. That'll be interesting. But yeah, that's it. I really think that's it. Miami, I'll put up in the stranger things have happened. But Jets, slight chance feels like Jets to me is rest up for 2025.
Yes.
Bears feels
clean
like
house.
It's a sinking ship right now with the Bears, but they have the talent that makes it feel possible. So they'd go into stranger things for me.
I mean, Tampa Bay would have to get. I mean, when does Evans come back?
After the bye week, so they got a bye week, and then it's coming up. And
they need him desperately.
Well, their schedule is very easy, very manageable. Bucks go. Listen to this, Gibby.
So talk to me, Goose.
They're at 4-6. They go at Giants. They have bye week this week. Then Evans comes back at Giants, at Panthers, home Raiders. So they should be 7-6. They should go 3-0 in those games. Then at Chargers, tough. At Cowboys, not tough. Home Panthers, home Saints. Division games, weird stuff happens, but this is not. They're probably only going to be an underdog in one of these final 7 games. So they could get to 10-7, but that still wouldn't be enough to catch the Falcons, barring a disaster.
So, in a strange turn of events, does 10-7 guarantee you the playoffs in the NFC?
No.
More so than the AFC?
No. I think 10-7 will guarantee you in the AFC. I think the NFC is tougher. The NFC right now, you've got the last team in right now is 6-3, and the Niners are at 5-4. Niners could go 5-3, and they're ahead already. Then they beat the Bucks. So yeah, it's no.
You might need 11.
So I have a computer model here that gives playoff percentages.
Oh, fancy computer.
99% Chiefs, Lions, Bills. 97 Steelers, 95 Ravens, 94 Houston, 91 Minnesota, 91 Philly, 87 Chargers, 86 Commanders, 84 Falcons, 76 Packers, 69% Arizona, and then 49 for Denver, 34 for the Niners, 33 Indianapolis, 28 Tampa, 19 for the Rams, 16% for the Bengals. And then you get down in the 10% and below is Seattle, Jets, Chicago, Dallas, New Orleans, Tennessee, New England, Las Vegas, Carolina, Cleveland, Jacksonville, and the G-Men.
Are the G-Men the worst team in the NFL?
They might be. I don't know. They beat us here, so.
Don't remind me.
Dreadful.
Right now, G-Men or Jacksonville? Who's worse?
With Mac Jones,
Trash.
Jacksonville. Mac Jones was saying it. It's very possible that, Trevor Lawrence is good. There's a lot of bad just going on right now. That's what it feels like. There's just a lot of bad going on right now.
I get it.
But this is wild to have. I think you could put 10 teams that are out of it. And I'm putting the Jets in that list. The Jets seem to be out of it.
So at 3-7, done.
If you add the Jets to that list, there are 10 teams that are done. 22 teams are left, and it really feels like of those 22, you've got
a fourth
16 that really have a chance to be in that final 14.
You're taking the Colts out of that.
They're in strange. I mean, listen, Bucks are the best of that. I'd put them maybe on the fringe of hope and despair since we saw their schedule. Colts, no. Rams, no. Miami, Chicago, no. Seattle, no. But they're in stranger things have happened. But it's pretty, teams just need to hold serve. Now, injuries change everything. When you look at backup quarterback situations, injuries could absolutely change everything down the stretch. But if teams stay healthy, that's what I think that's where we're going to be at here as we get ready for it. So there you go. A little better or worse. It's good. It's a good discussion. It's just wild that this is, you talk parity. I think this is going to be the largest group of teams eliminated early we've seen in many, many years.
Correct.
Like last year,
from a large margin.
Yeah. Last year, wasn't it like 30 of the teams were still totally in it with like 2 weeks to go?
Because no one made a move at the trade deadline.
Yeah.
Everybody was still in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very different this year, unfortunately.
All right, here's something just to think about. The NFL Nerd says we're about 6 months away from the 2025 schedule release. Here's my first mock international schedule, including cities and dates, mostly guesses. Houston at the Chargers in Rio de Janeiro. Buffalo at Pittsburgh in Dublin, Ireland. The Rams at Jacksonville in Wembley. Jacksonville at the Broncos in London, Tottenham. Browns at Jets in London, Tottenham. Washington at Kansas City and Berlin. Cincinnati at Miami and Madrid. And Dallas at Las Vegas in Mexico City, Mexico.
All right. Is Rodgers still with the Jets?
I don't know. I really, that I don't know. Could perhaps not.
What does that team look like a year from now?
Who knows? That's wild.
Correct.
A lot's going to change, I think, in a great many places by next year. All right, we'll be back. So much more to come. Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Bally Bet, a sports betting partner of your Cleveland Browns. Come on out to Razzles in Olmsted Falls this Thursday. Gibbe Country this Thursday,
Let's go.
November the 14th from 7 to 8 to hear our coaches show live and to meet DeJuan Jones. He'll be signing autographs throughout the night, and he is brought to you by Bud Light. All right, Gibbe.
Love it. 7-8.
Razzles, baby.
Razzles, the fun place.
Yeah, there's some volleyball courts.
They could very well be playing outdoors.
There could be, which is unprecedented for one of these remotes to have
Yes.
outdoor volleyball going on. You can come on out to Razzles, again, this Thursday, November the 14th from 7 to 8. and meet DeWand Jones. All right, players will be back tomorrow. Now we're back on a regular week schedule briefly because then we go Thursday night, coming right off of this game down in New Orleans. Cavs 12-0. They've been awesome. Penguin, I've told you already, if you haven't seen it, go see it. Start the show. It's unbelievable. One of the best series I've ever watched, 8 episodes. And supposedly now they're saying it's so good that they might do another season, but it's probably going to lead into a movie. But Colin Farrell should win every award. He was incredible. Everybody who produced the show, everybody associated with it, they need to win awards. It was incredible. All right, the next level is next. We want to thank Joe Thomas and Nick Shook for joining us. For the G-Man, J-Mac, for my man, give up. Nathan Zegura saying thanks for listening to Cleveland Browns Daily, brought to you by Ballybet on 850 ESPN, Cleveland, WKNR.
You've been